Good afternoon, students. My name is Sydney Stali. I'm your lecturer for General Nursing Science 2. So this afternoon, we are gonna talk about tuberculosis. So today's topic will be tuberculosis. I'm sure each and every one of you knows what tuberculosis is, or you have heard it somewhere. So it's a very easy topic. It's a straightforward topic. All you have to do is pay attention, listen attentively, and participate nicely. You won't struggle with this topic. So tuberculosis is a well-known disease in our country, so it's known countrywide. It's also known globally. So before I go into details with the lesson, let me ask the class, what do you know about tuberculosis? You can say anything that you know about tuberculosis. It can be how it's spread, it can be how it's prevented, it can be how it's treated. So you can just say anything to the class. There is no wrong answer, there is no correct answer. We are all learning, we are learning from each other. Okay? Your hand is up, you can go ahead, the floor is yours. Okay, perfect, you have said it all. So you are right, yes, tuberculosis is an infection of the lungs, or it's a disease of the lungs which is caused by a bacteria. Yes, perfect. So moving on, as a student, you are expected to know the following at the end of this lesson. So I'm gonna run through the learning outcomes that are prepared for this lesson. So as a student, you have to be able to know this at the end of the lesson. The first learning outcome is definition of tuberculosis and the causative organisms of tuberculosis. So at the end of the lesson, you should be able to define what TB is and what causes TB. The next learning outcome is differentiate between TB infection and TB disease. This might be confusing to some of you because you won't be able to tell the difference between TB infection and TB disease because it almost sounds like the same thing. Let me just touch a bit on this one. TB infection, it simply means you have the causative organism of TB in your body, but you don't have the symptoms. This simply means you don't have the disease. On the other hand, when it comes to TB disease, it means you have the bacteria in your body and you are presenting signs and symptoms. This simply means you have the disease. So in short, that it will go into details as the lesson goes. The next learning outcome is symptoms of TB. So this one here, you are expected to know the symptoms of TB. Let me say you are at your clinical setting and you are screening a patient. You should be able to tell these signs and symptoms of tuberculosis, and further investigations need to be done with the help of your supervisors, your seniors. Next, you have to describe the mode of spread of TB. This, in simpler terms, it means you have to describe how TB is transmitted from one individual to the next individual. So tackle all these areas, you'll be able to get something from all these learning outcomes. You will leave this class with knowledge on TB. Moving on, you have to describe factors that contribute to the spread of TB. This one is straightforward, self-explanatory. Next, you have to tell the preventative measures of TB. How can TB be prevented? How can we reduce the spread of it? How can we prevent it from being spread from one person to another? Next, we are gonna tackle, or you are expected to know, the treatment of TB. let me say a patient is diagnosed with TB. What treatment do doctors prescribe for patients? So here you are expected to know the regime for each patient that is diagnosed. So we'll touch all these areas. Next, you have to identify the diagnostic studies for TB. When we talk about diagnostic studies, these are investigations that we can do as healthcare professionals to tell us if the patient is having tuberculosis or not. For instance, a patient comes with a productive cough, persistent cough for ±2 weeks. So as a health worker, you have to do some investigations like collection of sputum. So sputum can be collected and sent to the lab. So the results will tell us if TB is detected in that patient's sputum. So the patient will be diagnosed from there. So as the lesson goes, we'll touch all these areas and you'll be able to know all the different diagnostic studies for tuberculosis. Our last learning outcome on the list is the complications of tuberculosis. So this simply means the worst side effects that can arise if tuberculosis is not tackled or if it's not treated on time after diagnosis. So in short, that's it. From now we are going to move into details. We are going to discuss all the learning outcomes. Before we continue, is there any question? Okay, perfect. If there is no question, we can move on.